Hello and welcome to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. Joining me is my brother Ralph Valenti. We got a few things to cover here when it comes to all Elite Wrestling news, including Cody Rhodes' dream opponent, Eddie Kingston being signed, and the deal that Zack Ryder, aka Matt Cardona, signed with All Elite Wrestling. Coming up next on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. Ralph, let's first talk about what Cody Rhodes had to say. He recently did an interview with Sports Illustrated, and they asked him what dream opponents he'd like to have for the TNT Open Challenge. And one of the people that he brought up was the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, Nick Aldis. I think it should be a match we definitely should get. The question is, will it happen? Obviously, with NWA in limbo right now, are they going to be a company come the end of 2020? Can Nick Aldis appear on Dynamite without, NWA happening right now? Should it happen? Ralph, your thoughts?
Well, I'll address your last question first. Should it happen? Yes, I definitely think it should happen, given that there is certainly history between both Cody and Nick Aldis. Going back to All In, you remember their epic confrontation. I call it epic because it was really kind of the first of its kind in quite a long time. So there's already the history there. So it's not like they necessarily have to write a story to go along with this and get people emotionally invested in it. Nick Aldis is a guy, in my opinion, that is certainly a step above the people that Cody Rhodes has wrestled. Now, Eddie Kingston, who we're going to talk about, was able to go out there, cut that epic promo, create a lot of buzz, get a lot of attention, and ultimately get himself signed. But we've seen Cody go against the likes of Sonny Kiss, Warhorse, and in my opinion, while those matches were fine and they were good and they were able to highlight some of the younger talent that is up and coming, Nick Aldis is already a guy that's mostly established, especially to this specific fan base that AEW typically will attract. So knowing that, this would be an easy sell for them. It would get a lot of attention. It would get a lot of buzz. And I think it would make for a fun rematch because we know they're already, I believe, 1-1, where Cody won the championship and then Aldis ultimately won it back from him before the formation of AEW. So I'd be into it. And this is something we already predicted going back to our episode, I believe, about a month ago.
Yep. When the Open Challenge first started, we said who we want to see Cody answer the Open Challenge, and Aldis was definitely one of them. I believe I was the one that pointed it out, but I definitely want to see it happen. The thing is with NWA, I think this is going to be the problem. His contract with NWA, does it allow him to do things outside of NWA? And would that include AEW? Now, we see Ricky Stark signed to AEW. We see Eddie Kingston signed to to AEW. Now, does that mean they're signed there until NWA comes back? Or are they signed to AEW? That's something we don't really know yet. And I'm assuming they're signed to AEW to be with AEW and no longer part of NWA. But I think this could also be a huge thing for NWA because right now they're in limbo. If they bring in the world's heavyweight champion to have a match against Cody, I believe that would help NWA and maybe they could work some kind of partnership. Everyone's talking about partnerships with AEW, whether that's Ring of Honor, New Japan, NWA. NWA could definitely benefit from AEW if there's a partnership. But let's move on to the news that, we kind of touched on already, and that is that Eddie Kingston has signed with All Elite Wrestling after his match with Cody for the TNT Championship. I think it's a great signing. It's definitely someone that AEW needs because right now they have a lot of guys that have in-ring talent, but their promos aren't exactly there, or they're not really given the opportunity to talk. Here's Eddie Kingston with one promo, one match, got himself over and got himself a contract with AEW. Think it was absolutely perfect.
No, I got to agree. And like you pointed out, this is a guy who was able to go out there, cut a promo, and create what many consider to be almost an epic moment. He had a really good match against Cody. Following that up, a lot of people were all over social media saying that they wanted AEW to sign Kingston, and they went out and they did that. The interesting thing now is, what do they do with him from here? I got to imagine this is a guy that they're going to insert into some type of storyline, even a faction right away, considering the type of buzz and attention that he did get, given the fact that he certainly does have a lot of charisma. There's a very sense of realism that comes with his, I don't even want to call it a character because I get the sense that that's who he truly is. when he's talking. It's very believable.
Right.
A lot of times in professional wrestling, especially with the younger talent, it almost seems like you can tell that they're in character, so to speak.
Right.
And with him, it comes across as very real and very raw. And I think that's something that can get the attention of a lot of people. When he comes in to a room and he's able to talk, he commands the room. All eyes are on him.
Exactly.
So I got to think that he's going to be put in a faction right away. I don't think he's a guy that you're going to see, wrestling on Dark on a Tuesday night. I got to think that he's going to be put in some type of storyline right away where he is a main focal point in one way or another. So great catch for AEW. And I want to see where it goes from here.
I see a lot of people commenting on the signing of Eddie Kingston, and they're saying one of two things for him. One, get into a program with Jon Moxley because the promos would be fire, and their background in the hardcore style wrestling, obviously people would want that. The other thing that I saw was possibly taking Santana and Ortiz out of the inner circle, bring Diamante in and have some kind of LAX in AEW. I think that would be a good move too. Either way, I think as a singles wrestler, I don't know if his first real feud should be with Moxley, especially if Moxley's going to retain the title at All Out. That's still to be seen. But I definitely like the faction idea with Santana, Ortiz, and Diamante.
Definitely agree. I've already seen a lot of people commenting on that in social media, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say MJF 2020. I think the Moxley era is going to end, so I wouldn't worry too much about a feud between Moxley and Kingston, at least for the title, because it's MJF's time to shine here.
I agree. It definitely is MJF 2020. I actually put a poll up on our community page asking who would be the champion coming out of All Out, MJF or Jon Moxley. And right now, MJF is winning that poll. But a guy that also appeared on AEW Dynamite recently this past week was Zack Ryder, now going by his real name, Matt Cardona. You would think that he'd have a big signing, a big contract with AEW, but believe it or not, that's not the case. According to an exclusive from Wrestling Inc., they are reporting that Ryder, Cordona, whatever you want to call him, his deal is for only 5 appearances. So he already had one. He's going to have one next week. So that means 3 more appearances left in this little short-term deal. My guess is this is to set up a TNT Championship match with Cody. Now, is that on Dynamite or is that at All Out? I'm not sure. I would think it would be All Out. But you also have this thing with the Dark Order and Brody Lee. That maybe be the next step in the TNT Championship. So what do you think of this short-term deal with Ryder? Is it a tryout and eventually we'll get a longer-term deal? Or do you think it's just for Cardona to showcase himself and then maybe he just wants to work the indies?
Well, I don't think he wants to work the indies. I think that he'd be very limited in his dates, not because of who he is and the way he's been booked, but because of the pandemic. You got to think that there's limited places where he'd be able to go and work. I got to think that this is eventually going to culminate in a match with him and Cody based out of respect. He came out when he helped Cody against Thing 1 and Thing 2, so we got Colonel Sanders there in the biscuits. So they got their thing going on with the Dark Order. And I don't know if that's going to be successful or not, but I don't see them being involved in a storyline with Cody going forward. Zack Ryder, or Matt Cardona, whatever you want to call him, is a guy that, whether people want to admit this or not, he got a lot of attention in WWE. He was one of the first guys in a very, very long time to get himself over by himself, not being pushed by the machine, not being pushed by the money by WWE, not by the marketing team. This is a guy that got himself over. And can he carry that charisma over to AEW? And can he attract some extra attention? That's going to be the important thing. This is certainly a step up for Cody in the sense that, again, he's going to be facing a guy that has a lot more recognition, a little more credibility to his name right now. So I hope this does actually happen. Not so much because it's a match that I'm looking forward to, but because I know that what that match will mean for AEW. It's a smart business move.
It is. It really is a smart business move, but I'm just shocked that they didn't just give him a long-term deal out of the get-go. Why only the 5 appearances? This is a guy with a proven record in WWE to get himself over, like you said. And, I mean, it showed in the viewership. In his quarter hour, there was a boost in viewership in both the 18 to 49 and total viewership. So I would think they would just give him a contract, especially with Cody and him being such close friends. But it is only 5 dates, so maybe they're like, okay, let's create this 5 apparent storyline that culminates with something. And my guess is the TNT Championship at All Out. And if that's the case, do you think that actually hinders AEW? Because here's a guy that comes from WWE, doesn't even have a match yet, and now they're planning him to have a TNT Championship match, which is supposed to showcase the AEW roster, which it has so far, but on its first real big pay-per-view for a defense, it's going to a WWE, a former WWE talent.
I'm fine with it because it seems like they're doing a good job of managing both. They're able to accomplish 2 things here, right? So we've already seen them, or Cody specifically, put guys over or put guys in a position where they can get some extra attention. Warhorse, whether people like that match or dislike the match, he was put in the opening segment with a guy like Cody. He got some extra attention. Kingston, we already talked about this. Good things are coming out of this title run with Cody. So they're able to get guys over. They're able to get their good young guys some extra attention. And they're also able to bring in guys like Cordona and give them these opportunities to bring that extra attention to the company, which ultimately, like I said, that's a good business move. You want people watching, you want people invested. And if that means putting some of these former WWE guys into certain matches where, they're getting that attention and drawing more eyes to your product, that's a win-win for the young talent, and it's a win-win for AEW. As we pointed out, this is right now a limited contract. So one, you got to wonder, is he making that Brock Lesnar money? Might be. No, I'm joking about that part of it. But here's the main thing. If it's limited and it's only 5 dates and it's one match it all out, supposing Cody goes over, he goes away, well, now you have that match lined up for a guy like maybe a Darby Allin or somebody else who eventually will take that title off. So I don't have any worries about them putting the WWE guys in these positions and taking spots away from the younger talent. Although some people are criticizing Cody for more or less seeming like he's the Triple H of AEW. I've seen that criticism on social media a little bit.
Yep.
I don't think that's the case. I mean, he's giving these guys opportunities. He's letting people make their name off the matches that he's going out there and having. So Cardona being on a limited contract, I think it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. Let's not read too much into this.
Yeah, I totally agree. But the 5 dates, like I said, just is alarming. But then again, FTR was working there with no contract. At least that's what they said. Finally signed them to a deal, multi-year deal. And that's probably what's going to happen with Ryder. They're probably just, saying it's 5 dates, but then eventually it will lead to a long-term deal. It's just a matter of negotiating the long-term aspects of that deal. So they're just like, all right, let's just agree to 5 now and go to worry about the long-term later. That's what I think it is. If it does end up that the match is at All Out, do you see Ryder, Cardona actually beating Cody?
No, I don't. I think that has to go to one, like we talked about, one of the younger up-and-comers. I still think Darby Allin is the guy to beat him and take the title off him because they do have that history, and the story that they've been telling along is just that Darby can't beat Cody. I don't think he's going to beat Moxley next week, or I should say this week coming up. I don't know if that's a title match right now, but either way, I don't see him beating Moxley. So I think that eventually he needs to get that big win, and that's the story they're trying to tell. Darby can't get that big win, and I think eventually it will be Cody that he does beat for the championship.
Well, time will tell to see whether or not this Cardona Rhodes match ends up on Dynamite or All Out. Who takes the title off of Cody, and possibly seeing Nick Aldis challenge Cody for the TNT Championship. But let us know in the comments what you guys think. Should we see Cody versus Aldis? Should we see Eddie Kingston with Moxley, or form a faction with a AEW version of LAX? And tell us what you think of the Zack Ryder deal. Don't forget to share us all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, SCPB Podcast. And for news, reviews, and conversations on all things pro wrestling, subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications. For Rob Valenti, my name's Michael Valenti. Thank you for watching the Squared Circle Psychobabble.